More volume is not the solution to an intensity problem. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something I've observed in my own training, something I've observed over many, many years of coaching. And that is the simple fact that in spite of what some of the newer studies are showing, and again, I try to be very open-minded with this stuff, just adding more volume, particularly if it comes at the expense of intensity, doesn't really seem to do much for muscle growth, right? Doesn't seem to do much for muscle growth. And also for me personally, when I start pushing the volumes up, as I've messed with some of this, even again within the last few months, right? When I push the volumes up, I end up training lazier, okay? Just so that we can make it through the session. You start holding back. Like, you wouldn't see me throw 225 on an incline like that and rep it out. I found when the volumes start going up, if I benched first, I end up doing like 155. And they're hard, they're challenging. Okay? Something I've noticed. Same thing with a lot of clients. I've watched a lot of novice clients just throw tons of volume at stuff and completely stagnating, completely stall. But when I take them down to about 10 sets for a muscle group a week and make them work really hard, what happens? They start making progress again. And that's the thing that I'm gonna point out. I have never seen a client who, if we do 10 really hard sets a week for muscle growth, and by hard I mean within one rep of failure, right? They don't have to necessarily go to failure, and then hit their weak links a little bit more. They make progress, right? I've seen novices stall on that. I've taken fairly advanced lifters though, and pushed into those sort of volumes, and over the course of several months, they finally hit their first 3-plate bench press, right? They finally hit their first 5-plate squat. Okay, this is the sort of stuff I've noticed, and it doesn't happen overnight. Some people will be like, oh, maybe they were just overtraining and they recovered, and then all of a sudden the strength shoots up. There could be some truth to that, but except that it's stuff that then happens over 4 or 5 months, that those numbers just keep trickling up, right? If you have people train hard enough. But I feel like that is, a lot of the mantra that we see is that's coming out of certain evidence-based circles, is to just push the volumes really high. And here's the thing I would say with that. That only works if you can maintain the intensity of the workout and you can recover. And I think that's kind of the take home. And this is one of the things I would say is the sweet spot in our volumes. Because when you look at some of the data that, again, has come out of these same circles, like if they take rest times too short and their performance degrades over 2 or 3 sets, what happens? They gain less muscle in the studies. Okay? They gain less muscle in the studies. I have observed that pretty much the same thing happens when volumes go too high. If performance degrades too much over the workout, we end up with poor quality muscle growth. And here's what I'm going to say. It's not necessarily about overtraining or purely the junk volume in. I think that's a factor because that ends up interfering with recovery, and it ends up interfering with motivation. But I think it's the case of the higher threshold muscle fibers are just not being used, right? And again, I've shown you guys data on that, studies on that the fastest twitch muscle fibers are capable of the most growth, even in novices. But of course, the longer you train, the less the slower twitch and intermediate fibers grow. They seem to max out in size. So really, it is hammering the faster twitch fibers that seems to give us the most prolonged growth. The problem is that they have a limited work capacity. And I'm not saying you can't build that work capacity. What I'm saying is if they are not being worked on any individual set, you're probably not stimulating enough muscle growth to justify that set. Right? So that is usually the takeaway when performance degrades. Like, for example, that incline set you saw there, that was the very last set I did for chest that day, and I actually had a good workout, right? But I did a training max on the pause bench that day. Then I did 3 sets of moderately heavy bench, 2 sets of incline. And I knew on that, because I don't count the training max as a work set, I knew on that 5th set, keep in mind training chest twice a week, I knew on that 5th set that was my best set of the day. And I knew based on how it felt, if I tried to do one more set, my performance would decline. So if I would have grabbed 225 again, I might have got 3 or 4 less reps. Okay, that's the point where we know we're done. When reps start cutting out, okay, when the reps start cutting out, and I'm going to say it's probably around that 3 rep mark, when you start losing about 3 reps with a given weight. Or you have to reduce the weight 10% or so to get the same reps. Those muscles involved are done. Those muscles are done. Anything further you do for them is not stimulating any muscle growth. And I'll say probably that set didn't either. Now, that can be hard to determine when we're doing really high rep sets. You know, like you see me doing here with these leg extensions. I mean, we're hitting 25 or so reps, whatever. That can be a little harder to judge. But if you're in that, anything under about 15 reps, you can tell, right? We can tell that difference. And please note, even in this, you guys see me doing a pretty wide variety of rep ranges, training maxes. You see some 8 rep stuff, some 10 rep stuff. Then you see 25 reps. I do believe in using a variety of rep ranges. I think they're different tools. But when it comes to the actual volume, when performance degrades, when your set-to-set performance goes down, depending upon your individual work capacity, your individual recovery between sets, I don't think that you're getting anything from it. And my observation as a coach, that I think at that point, everything that you are doing is junk volume. And I think everything at that point is simply interfering with recovery. And that's based upon really looking at the concepts in the scientific literature, what they've studied, what they found with muscle growth, then using some common sense with it, and then observing in the real world how this stuff plays out. Right? And that's a very individual thing. People say, well, how many sets is that? Well, I don't know. For one person, it might be 5 sets in a workout for a muscle. Right? And assuming you're training more than once a week on it. Not everyone is. They may be doing a body part split or 3-day push-pull legs. But, it might be 5 sets. For someone else, it might be 10. So you can't really pin that down. But I think that really is the key. I think that is the biggest thing to look for. Is your performance degrading on a set-to-set basis? And if it is, the volume you're adding is probably doing nothing. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.